We'll call this to order. Peggy, you ready?
I am ready.
Wonderful.
Jamie Frisch,
Present.
Luke Stitch,
Here.
Bill Van Campen,
Here.
Dave Jameson,
Here.
Miller Sang, and Mark Miller.
I'm here. Thank you. Item 3, approval of the November 9th, 2021 meeting minutes. Have all been sent forward in the packet. You have them all. Is there any comments or any corrections?
Move to approve. I'll second.
Got a second? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? None heard. Thank you very much. Item 4, public appearances. This gives the community the opportunity to have some input to the park board. So we do have some limitations of up to 15 minutes will be provided for the community input. We allow the speakers to have about 3 minutes of time. These are available for the park board to listen to the community input. The park board may not necessarily respond, but could ask some questions and any further. Is there anybody in the community that would like to talk to the park board? Jerome, welcome. Let's see if the microphone works.
How's it sound?
I can hear you.
All right. So yes, I'm that Jerome Klein. I'm a former park board member, and I just wanted two things. I just want to just briefly acknowledge why I resigned. I know it was addressed at the last meeting, but initially when I signed up to volunteer, probably at the urging of some of the staff that I've met with over the years, I was really excited about the position. I probably didn't fully understand the expectations, and as I better understood the role and how it got defined and maybe looked at more from a year-round perspective, I realized that might not be the best fit for me. We are fortunate enough to be snowbirds, so we head out of town 4 months out of the year, and just with my travel schedule, kids and grandkids in 2 different states, it's just as I missed probably the last 3 meetings, I just decided to tender my resignation in light of kind of my better understanding of the role. So I wanted to thank the staff, thank the existing board members for their support and their volunteer of a very important role. So just wanted to get that out of the way. Secondly, I wanted to talk specifically about the J.C. Park project. I've been involved in that from a pickleball perspective, club standpoint, for the last three or 4 years. And I just wanted to urge the park board members to, and I know there's a presentation on that later on in the meeting here. I want to urge them to really fully understand the cost implications of the project and the timing and a little bit of historical perspective. And I think it really lines up well with the role of the park board as was further defined for me as in the memo that was put out by the village staff back in October. You're kind of looking at the annual work plan of the park board, and one of those pieces is really being the integral to the implementation and achievement of goals and objectives. It's in the municipal budgeting process. Projects and equipment need money, and that often needs to be lined up for years in advance. The park board should make advisory actions to the village board on these matters. So I think that fits right in line with what you all are tasked to do. From a taxpayer perspective, I think the current funding that's approved is $4 million, and then there's another $500,000 kind of earmarked for donations, contributions, other sources. So a total of $4.5 million. There was a detailed preliminary cost estimate I saw that was put together back in the October timeframe, which I believe at that point was like $4.7 million. And then if I look at the 2 phases that's in the current packet, it's $5.9 million. Now, we all know what's going on with inflation, but that's a pretty significant increase over a 2-year window. So again, I would just urge the park board to really understand how the phasing and the costs were determined. Speaking selfishly from pickleball, we really didn't get a chance to input into the process in terms of what should be in and what shouldn't be in. I'm not sure if the other sports clubs were involved in the process over the last few months or not. And then, so really trying to understand the timing and the funding of the phase 2. And again, if I was in your shoes, I would want to see kind of the initial estimates, and then maybe what was in the 2020 October estimate, and how that lines up with the current estimates. I tried to piece it together from some of the work that I had seen, and there's things like earthworks and demolition, which was $480,000 back in October of 2020. Now it's over $1 million. Utilities was $350,000. Now it's about $700,000. So hopefully some of that stuff can be explained. The other one that really stuck out to me was parking. I think currently we have between Oak Street and Perry Parkway, I believe we have 90 parking spaces. We've been residents here for 27 years. We've been youth soccer, youth baseball, youth basketball coaches. We've been down to the park. We're active bikers and hikers. I know what the parking situation is like down there, but we've kind of managed our way through it, and I think it's a really expensive endeavor. I think the October 2020 proposal had 200 parking spaces in it for $360,000, and now it's got 280 parking spaces in it for $492,000, or about $1,700 a parking space. That's just for the parking, the pavement, and I'm guessing some of that earthwork and demolition costs are part of what's driving some of that big increases in that area as well. But again, I hope you guys can kind of get to the bottom of that. And I guess I would just make a urge again to see if there's some way that we can manage our way through this with perhaps some cost reductions or different phasing. I think there were 7 clubs that were involved in some of these fundraising meetings, and 6 of those clubs have been met with some form of a field or a renovation in phase 1, and pickleball is one that's gotten left out until phase 2, which is again a little bit undetermined. So are there things we can do with deferring some of the parking or landscaping or dugouts or some of that stuff that maybe would help give all clubs a chance to participate in phase 1? So that's really what's my plea. I know with the diligence and the effort that you guys put into it, you'll give it its due course. So thanks again for the time, and appreciate your efforts as part of a volunteer park board.
Thank you, Jerome. Do we have any questions for Jerome? Thank you for coming forward and clarifying it verbally about your involvement. Appreciate your contributions for the park board in the past, and look forward to your contributions future.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the community? Come on forward.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Barone. I am a 25-year resident of the village. I'm here to talk about the park, build off of what Jerome was saying, and add a couple other items. One of the areas that I'm looking at it from is really as an engineering professional. I spent 35 years of my career in engineering and project management work, so I know a little something about the process and how it works and what we're looking for. As I went through the drawings here, what's posted online, and there's not a lot of detail. Granted, I understand they're at the 30% level or somewhere between 30 and 50% at this time. The cost estimate does not have a lot of information in it. But I start looking at the costs that are in there, and we're up to $5.9 million from where we were originally, which is a huge jump. So then I start looking at where the project creep was, the scope creep, the inflationary costs, the phasing of the project, and I start wondering, and I've written down some things as to how do we go about looking at this project as a whole to maybe make it so it works for the entire community. I'm not really looking at trying to undercut one club versus another, though, as Jerome said, I represent pickleball, play quite a bit, and there's a selfish interest in that area. But from a taxpayer and an engineering professional, when I look at the items that are in the scope that I see today, I would like to present that to the board and ask that you take a critical eye on that. For example, Jerome mentioned landscaping. If my numbers were correct, I counted 1,276 plantings in the park project between phase 1 and phase 2. Now, granted, in a park you would like to have landscaping, trees, flowers, the sawgrass, that type of thing. But I wonder what the advantage is to having landscaping when these are supposed to be for athletic fields. And the athletic fields I grew up around, and many of you probably have, there wasn't a lot of those type of amenities there, at least in the initial phase. Another area that I would ask you to look at would be around the irrigation of the fields. It's critical to irrigate the grass, the sod, in the beginning phases to make sure it germinates, to make sure it roots and it grows strong. But there's other methodologies to watering versus irrigating. You also have a major maintenance issue with irrigation throughout the years. And I don't know if Jeff and his department want to take that particular thing on or if it's going to be hired out, but that's a cost to the village. For example, when you have an underground irrigation system, every fall you have to blow it out. You have to get the water out of the system so it doesn't freeze and break. With a project this size, that's going to be a major undertaking. Just talk to the golf course guys. I mean, they'll tell you it is. There's other areas that I would like to be able to look at from an overall perspective, and just a couple things that came to mind when I was looking at pickleball. When you look at value engineering and constructability, something as simple as the fence around the pickleball courts. They're 10 foot high, but I can make the argument we don't have to have a 10-foot fence there. We could probably get away with a 5-foot fence. Granted, it's not a lot of money, but the point is these little things all add up to a bigger pot of money, and at this point in time, every dollar is critical. From a pickleball standpoint, when you look at the phasing, I'm very concerned with where we are in the phasing because of the amount of people that play pickleball in this village. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America. The recent numbers that I had was pickleball grew 21.3% year over the last year. Now, granted, you can make the argument that it's COVID related, but the point is that people are now gravitating toward the game and they're playing. Pickleball is a gender neutral and it's an age neutral game. If you come out there on Tuesday or Thursday nights, you'll see we have families playing, we have teens, we have young adults, we have grandparents out there. We've had 3 generations of people on the court at the same time. So where I'm going with this is that to leave pickleball out of the initial phase or to leave any of the sports clubs out of one phase, I think would be wrong. We want to get the kids, we want to get the adults playing on the courts and on the fields, and how do we delay maybe the cost with some of the amenities? It could be landscaping, it could be dugouts, it could be other areas that we don't necessarily need to spend the money right up front, but that could be added on a little bit later. When you look at the communities around us, every community around us has pickleball courts, permanent pickleball courts, not dual-use courts. I can't name one community around us. They're either building them or they have them currently. Now, you may say, well, we already have pickleball courts, the Oak Street courts. Jeff will tell you firsthand that the courts are in dire need of repair. I had 2 contractors come out that are court repair experts, court restoration experts that were identified by USA Pickleball. They came out and looked at the courts and they walked away and said, we will not touch these courts. They're so bad we cannot fix these courts without ripping them completely out and replacing them. If we do that, just build the new courts. And I have that in writing if anybody would care to see it. I have passed that along to Jeff. So I would ask that you, as you're going through the plan, to look at how we can reprioritize getting the kids, getting the citizens back on the playing fields as a whole without cutting any of the sports clubs out. The last thing I would ask is that if I could maybe have 5 or 10 minutes with, I assume the Rutler people right here, if I could just chat with them with your permission at the end of the meeting, just to talk about the design around pickleball. And there may be a couple ideas that we can take some cost out, maybe change a little things to make the flow a little better, a little safer for everybody that's involved. And if you're okay with that, I would love to do that. So lastly, I would ask that, I know Martin had a letter to the board here about approving this project and moving forward. I would ask you to take a step back, as Jerome has said, and let's look at this project as a whole, look at the phasing, look at the cost, look at the scope creep. Are there things we can take out of the project? things that we can delay from the project? Can we bring it down the cost a little bit through some value engineering and constructability evaluations? But I know from my own experience, there's many ways of doing this if we put our mind to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barone. Any questions, Mike?
Say, Mike, any idea how many unique players you have perhaps in the summer using the pickleball court?
You know, that's a great question, Phil, and I meant to bring that up. Yes, we have, I'm going to answer in a couple different ways. I'm on the board of directors, as Jerome is, with the Capital Area Pickleball Association. We have over 580 members as part of that. Now, when you drill down into the Village of Oregon, Amy Miller and myself, we keep a list of players that play here in Oregon. There's over 250 names that are on the list. When you come by the courts, and I know Mark has been by, and some of the other folks may have been by the courts, on Tuesday and Thursday evening during the spring, summer, and fall, we have 6 courts that are full with 4 players per court, and we usually have in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 to 16 players waiting to get on the courts. Now, we also play indoors at the Oregon High School. Every Sunday, we play from 9 to noon. This past Sunday, we had 60 players in the gym for 8 courts. So if you do the math, we have almost 30 players that are waiting to get on the courts. So the popularity, the ease of playing the game, the fun of playing the game, that's why we're so adamant of trying to look at the phasing and get us onto phase 1 or on the initial phase with the other sports clubs.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other community input? People would like to talk with the park board? Okay, hearing none. Move on to item 5, reports from the village officers and the village administrative report.
Yeah, I had a report there in the packet for you guys, just a couple updates on a few things. I know that Randy's going to be putting forth a nomination on Monday to replace the vacancy that Jerome mentioned earlier. And then the Dish Park resolution that was recommended at the last meeting was approved by the village board. And then we have some things going on related to the park reservation management and coordinating some recreation things on staff. So some of that stuff will be coming to this board in the next couple of months.
Yes.
Just one question, Martin. Will this new position being filled, a recreation coordinator, will that person also be involved in working with us to develop a 5-year plan?
Yeah.
Maybe the lead person on that, more than likely?
I don't know that they'll be the lead, but they'll definitely be involved with it.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the things that the park board has typically done is in the January meeting, we ended up having a lot of the sports organizations come and talk about what their park needs are. How are we going to develop that? I think often Deb organized that in the past, and so she reached out to everybody, and how are we going to manage that? I think it's still really valuable to be able to get people's input, what their needs are.
I assume that's what you want to do in January
That
as well? Yeah.
Probably, because of the timing is going to be such that, February will come around, March, and before you know it, people are going to be ready to get on the fields.
Right. Yeah, no, as a village staff, we can pull it together and we'll
Think you can do that?
have it on the board.
Yeah, we've been talking about, like the Martin's memo says, as far as how we're gonna handle the scheduling and everything like that, and we're discussing how we're gonna do that internally, this next year, and,
Okay.
until we get someone on board, and we may likely not have that person on board until June, July, and depending on applicants too. We don't know how many applicants we'll get.
True.
We just went through 2 hiring processes and had very few applicants.
I just know the staff doesn't have a lot of abundance of excess time, so that makes it challenging
No.
overall, so. Any comments in regards to the report? Thank you very much for putting that together, Martin, appreciate that. glad to hear that the Dish Park resolution is carried forward, and that essentially the village president will appoint that and make that announcement on that. So I do appreciate all of those that did submit their applications. There were quite a few, and so that was real pleasant. So give some choices to Village President Glitch for that. All right. Moving on to item 6, communications and miscellaneous business. Request from Les Swanson regarding a tire swing and other improvements at the John Blanchard Dog Park. Les, are you here? Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening to us. In interest of full disclosure, I installed a tire swing at the dog park illegally, I guess, last spring. And it was well used, and I think appreciated by little tykes as well as grandparents who said that it was easier to get their kids to come when they knew the swing was there. But the swing wore out, and I putting up another one when I was stopped and told I couldn't do that. I needed to get permission to do it. So that's what I'm here for, is to ask permission to replace it, or even, a couple of them if it's okay, because there are a lot of little kids there that seem to enjoy it, and there were even adults on it, and it was like, I'm not sure you should be on there, but this one will be adult-proof if I get to put it up, so.
I'm not
That's,
familiar with it. Can you describe what it's like? I didn't get
I
to-
should have taken a picture. It's a tire, it's laid, flat. There are 3 ropes coming up on it, so you can put your butt right down in the tire itself, and then you can twirl it or you can swing it.
Is it attached to a tree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, we put a sky hook up there.
Well, I wasn't sure. Yeah, I would have seen that, I think, but
Yeah. No, we find a sturdy tree and a branch, and I think all the trees there are box elders, which wouldn't be my first choice for a tire swing, but
Right.
pretty selective on it, and that part is safe unless we get a tornado or something.
That's a sensitive topic.
But the swing itself is rubber, it's a tire, and
I actually have pictures of it
Oh,
for
do
my
you?
kids on it, if you'd like to see it.
They all verify things.
Yeah, if you just wanna, if that's okay to share.
So,
But my kids enjoyed it quite a bit, and I did as well.
okay, I see. Well, thank you for sharing on it. I'm assuming we want to take a look. Jeff, do you want to make
Well,
some comments? about-
Yeah, so my staff called me that day and said, there's a pickup truck out in the middle of the dog park installing a swing, and I said, well, you have to let them know that they can't do that. And, and that's kind of was the response to that. Here's the challenge we have. Anytime, for one thing, we have to look at things from a liability standpoint. We're putting it on a tree, we don't know the condition of the tree.
Correct.
And, my staff takes care of the dog park, and its purpose there is for dog recreation and for its owners and for dog owners and both large dogs and small dogs. Stuff like this does happen in our parks at times. We find forts, we find some swings at times. A lot of times they're not maintained over time, and what happens is they break, and then next thing you know, we have a claim or something like that. I don't know, we've not had a swing claim while I've been
Fortunately.
with the village. However, it's just one of those things that if everyone kind of used public property for their own interests and desires, like, we have to tell people, you can't put your garden out there, you can't, it's just not fair to the public, because that's public land and not meant to be. People then tend to assume that they have the right to do that type of thing. And so, it's hard, we have to say no to a lot of things,
Right.
and people get angry about that, and I think the tire swing, someone came up to me over the weekend and said, "Do you see what's on Facebook?" And I said, "Oh, not the tire swing." And, yeah, it was all over Facebook, and everyone was like, "Oh, how dare they not do that?"
Oh, yes.
And, you know, it's just one of those things that we have swings in a lot of the parks. We have a tire swing type swing, I believe, over at J.C. Park West, at least for the time being, right? Until the bulldozers show up. But we do have, you know, lots of areas for kids for swinging and that type of stuff. So it has been my recommendation on things like this. It's very difficult. Someone will take care of them for the time being, but then they become our responsibility to maintain them. And when we decide to take them down, then we're the bad guys.
Right.
So my recommendation is that it's a dog park. It's not the best dog park. We always have acknowledged that. It's not the reason the land's never been built on is because it's a marsh to begin with. But we've done some improvements out there. We've added little fake hydrants for dogs to mark, and we've added the pads and some tables.
Right.
We mow some paths in the large dog park area. Create a really nice, as nice environment as we think we can with the funds that we have, because that's not a heavily funded park out there. So my recommendation is that we always appreciate people kind of wanting to contribute, help their community, but I would recommend against it.
When we talked about adopting a park, some of that concept was having the community to help and take care of things. And that was one of the concerns that the staff had talked about, is volunteers will come forward and do some things, but it can be a burden on the staff later because they put a berm in some heavily needed plants or something else. And we've had somebody come forward and put ask for a handicap swing. And we did go ahead, and they helped fund it and
Yep.
put it together. That's an
Yep.
awesome contribution. But what
That was on a steel structure though.
Correct. It's a commercial grade.
Commercially graded, and everything's already
Mhm.
been tested, and,
Yep.
you know, unfortunately, when something happens,
Mhm.
they always wanna know who made it, you know, and what's the manufacturer, and when, you know, what's its lifespan, and all that type of thing. So that's why we are very careful to order items that are already approved for park use.
Yeah, I think that we'd have to be protective of our village liabilities
Yeah.
associated with that. And
Would
make
you
sure-
order a compliant swing and put it up at the dog park? I don't care if it's my tire swing, I'm not gonna swing on it.
It would have to
Kids
go on
enjoy it.
an approved steel structure of some sort,
Correct.
not on a tree. That-
Correct, we'd have to make sure it's a structure appropriate for that commercial
Yeah, and we
grade.
have.
Would you do that?
We certainly
we-
consider.
Well, we don't have the funds for it, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
I would also be concerned, and I appreciate you coming forward, is that if we start putting up a swing, and pretty soon as the swing's set, and then all of a sudden, is it a dog park or is it a park?
Right.
And I think that people, you know, I would suggest the vast majority of the people that use it for a dog park would like it to be just that, not also be shared as a playground or whatever else
Yeah.
it might be. My thought.
Yeah, you gotta be careful, cause there's, especially this area that is being discussed is the large dog park area.
Mhm.
And large dog parks run free. I hear and see comments a lot of people of not containing their dogs and that type of stuff. I would not have a toddler running around the large dog park, you know, away from me or anything like that, but, that's just me.
Mhm. Any other comments from the park board? Yes, we got another question back?
I was to be on the agenda to speak in support of this.
Okay. If you'd like to step forward. Thank you, Les. Appreciate you coming forward.
Hi, my name is Amy Reeder. I actually live in one of the apartment complexes on South Perry Parkway. And I am at the dog park multiple times a day for good chunks of time, and I'm sure many of you recognize me and my dog River. First of all, thank you to Jeff. We really, really appreciate all the work that everyone does to accommodate all the families. I'm not sure if everybody realizes that you have people coming from not only the Oregon area, but some people that come from Stoughton and some people that come from Verona to visit this dog park. Part of it is the people who are there and the fact that it's family friendly. You have all kinds of age groups there. I'm not going to mention the ages of the gentleman behind me because that's rude. But you have everyone down to teenagers bringing their dogs. You have many families who have adopted their COVID animals. Plus, on my block alone, you know that we have well over 100 apartment units, and many have animals. A lot of dogs go from my block over to go to the dog park. And as far as volunteering and cleaning up, I put in my hours every single day to clean up for those that do not.
Yeah. Which has been a problem, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has,
It's
but-
frustrating.
But I actually brought my pooper scooper over, it makes it a lot easier. And I have vested interest in this. My daughter has some issues, and swinging helps her. As many of you know, that we do have a responsibility to those that have handicaps or who are differently abled. I am one. I do not look it, but I am. One of the gentlemen behind me uses a cane, and he is there every day, multiple times a day as well. You have children that are there in a stroller. You have so many ages and so many abilities. That swing has been a focal point. It has been wonderful. There are other girls or other children of different abilities that use that swing for calming. I know it sounds strange, but if a parent is in charge of their children and they also have to walk the dog, you can't do that at one of your regular parks. They're not enclosed, and you always run the risk of the child running off. The fact that this has a fence around it is wonderful. I am asking you, what will it take to have some kind of swing there? Do I need to start a petition? Do I need a survey? Do I need a sign-up sheet? Do I need to start a fundraiser? More than one person has been willing to put money forward to make something like this happen. I was also tasked to provide a different list of things that other dog owners would like to see. It sounds like the January meeting might be the best one to show up at, in which case I would like to be included in that as well. Jeff, you raised liability concerns, and so I want to do this step by step in the manner that you see fit, that makes everyone happy. Please give me information so that I may coordinate this. Thank you.
Welcome that, definitely.
I would,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Pete and others, there are actually two other people that walk with canes and are asking for a handrail to get into the dog park for access. Thank you.
Do you have a comment, Jeff?
my only comment is, I think it's great, and I hope that, I don't know if we sell many dog park passes to Verona and Stoughton.
I know, that's what
I
I was
was,
thinking, I'm like, no.
I might wanna bring that up, just because we do fund improvements, through the dog park, dog park fees and everything like that. So, and I'll be honest, we don't go out and check. We're not trying to go out and police. I've thought about it before, stopping by and just doing a tag check. And I don't wanna do that because that kinda sends the wrong message. You know, it's, what we wanna send is a message that, you know, we'd love to make improvements. Every year I look through the catalogs and I see these little dog ramps and little agility kind of equipment you can put out there, and you don't need massive foundations to put these type of things in. But the long and short of it is we just don't have a ton of funding. you know, but if you wanna raise funding for stuff like that, we are more than happy to have my crews go out and install, you know, if we're able to purchase that equipment, you know, and do that type of thing, those are things that we can make improvements to. But, you know, so I would encourage, as you're out there talking to people, tell them, buy a dog park pass, because that money does go, and that Lisa can attest to that, that money goes into that fund, and then we can use that fund to make improvements like we have, you know, at other times. And it's a tough area to make improvements to, because it's not, if you've been to the new dog park, I'm not trying to sell the new dog park, but the new dog park down on A, it's a very nice facility, and it's upland area and everything like that, but, those are my only comments from that.
Public service announcer, get your dog park renewal.
Get your tags, yes, get your
right.
tags.
It's the end of the
You know,
year, so it's
I mean, every once in a while, we'll have someone that emails us and complains about a condition in the dog park, and we'll check, and we'll say, honey, it's funny, we never seem to have, registrations for, or, tags for those individuals. And, you know, that's just part of, it's not expensive, what is it, $20 a year or something like that?
Yeah. 25?
25, yeah,
And then it's, there's a discount then on the second dog tag.
yeah, exactly, so,
One thing I do want to bring up is, you know, not only Robert's Rules of Order, and I apologize for speaking out of turn, but I want to make sure that I follow all village regulations, et cetera. I am a committee coordinator at the VA, and I'm very familiar with federal regulations, and I do not want to put the cart before the horse.
right.
So
Right.
please, if someone can just guide me and tell me, you know, what I need to start, and, you know, if I just raise my voice and say, please buy your dog tags, go to this website, I'm not going to be accused of fundraising on public property or something. So I just
No,
want to make sure I'm doing
We-
everything correctly.
No, I mean, that kind of thing, if, you know, I still, I'll be honest with you, I still wanna keep play equipment out of the dog park, or like people play equipment, that's just, I understand. The neat thing you mentioned about those with special needs for play
Yes.
equipment, one of the things that we are incorporating, we may have to shift to phase 2, we'll talk about that during our thing, but in our play area there, where we have asked for the designers of that equipment to incorporate sensory, there's like a sensory box, what do you call it? Sensory play area, you know, for, that still have activities that are for kids and young adults that need to kind of have that enclosure, but still have things to do at the play area and stuff like that, so.
And
we're-
will their support animals be allowed?
Yes, oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as they're on leash, well, I mean, support animals are a touchy thing, but yes, I mean, we would never go after support animals. And animals on leash would be allowed, because it's allowed in the park and everything like that. But just so you know that we do, in our parks, one of the things that we did just with Highlands and Netherwood Park, and we will be doing at this park, is we're definitely asking that our designers incorporate adaptive play in the equipment. Not all of the equipment, there's still regular swings, but then there's adaptive swings.
Mhm.
There's a spinner that actually is really great for adaptive use, and that's out there at Highlands and Netherwood. And so we really want to try to incorporate all uses out there, and the sensory,
Well, I think it's called the Serenity Spot.
Serenity
chair.
Spot, okay,
Yeah, and
Serenity
actually I
chair.
learned from the senior center that that's actually really great
Yeah.
for people with dementia as well. Kind of a quiet space to be able to observe and have fidgety type things to play with and all that. So
That
we're looking
sounds
forward
wonderful.
to having that be a part of the park.
but following direction of the park board and a recommendation, and direction from the board eventually, but recommendation from the park board and that type of thing. I mean, we're staff, will give our opinions and everything like that, but we do serve at the will of our village board. So, you know, petitions are fine, but I found it's much easier just to work together and, you know, if it's raising funds, for a project that's, you know, we're more than happy to assist and guide, in a positive way towards improvements, you know.
Do I just leave my contact information over here with Peggy?
You can, yeah, and I do have cards, I have a card I can give you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Item 7, unfinished business. Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Was gonna give my piece I signed up to talk to about the tire swing.
Okay.
I'm for the tire swing, but I got to thinking, I really don't mind if it's hung up by a tree or by a metal pipe swing frame, you know. I guess it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I was hoping that it could have like some shade up on top, but I think it's a good idea. Also about the ramp, if a person's got a dog in each hand and going down, that can be pretty slick. I wound up crashing into the gate with each dog going a different way, and I didn't let go, and some guys helped me up. And so there's more than just being old. It can get slippery and slick after it's been walked on a few times. And I was also thinking, you know, like how they have the gravel in the beginning, you could put like some wood chip mulch on top of the gravel. The gravel's a good thing up to a point, but to keep it from wearing out rubber boots so much. You know, in addition, I mean, on top of the gravel, like wood chips and easier on dogs' feet and rubber boots. Was also thinking if you planted willow trees or some other kind of tree that would drink up a lot of water over by the fence, by the ditch, it would dry it out a little more in the dog park. We should have trees in parks of all kinds, but I was thinking willow because that's something that grows in swamps, but it could be some other kind of tree. Whatever drinks up a lot of water and would do good, show off what works good. And then I hear this new subject about your, pickleball? Why couldn't they water it with like a tractor, with like a tank, or several smaller tractors with tanks, and just go out and spray it like after the sun goes down, maybe like 6 o'clock at night, like I would with my garden, and consistently give it a spray of water rather than hitching up an underwater thing. I mean, it seems like a more practical, good start. That way, like when the grass is getting germinated, it would work, and you could even go on a different little path with a different little tractor every night. Several tractors. I remember one guy who planted that's the bell. I should go.
Thank you for appreciate it.
Yeah.
Moving on to item 7, unfinished business. Presentation from Redler Corporation on the updated
Mark,
plans.
just for clarification, was there any direction that you've given us on that item? I mean, or is that a board direction? We gave recommendation, but I don't.
Yes.
I just want to be clear for the minutes and everything.
Correct.
I would recommend that we do not move forward at this time.
So making a recommendation, we don't move forward. Thank you. HVAC system at work. Sound was supplemental. So Peggy, did you catch that?
I did not.
So made a recommendation from Mr. Licks about would not move forward with the swing in the dog park at this time. So we won't put anything forward to the village board.
And I'll commit to look at least the entrance paths to make sure we have fresh gravel on those. We do not want to put bark on top of
Yes.
fresh gravel, but I'll make sure that they're at least kept in decent shape. And
Thank you,
everything.
appreciate that.
And maybe the handrails too.
Well, yeah, we don't, I'm a little nervous about the handrails.
Yeah, that could be tough too.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the slope is along there. I can't believe it's that steep either.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's
Next
been
step
some
would be
wash.
steps and then
Yeah.
a ramp and,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So, I'm gonna turn it over to
Thank you, Mark.
Rutherford Corporation. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Yeah, on behalf of Rutherford Corporation, I wanted to thank both the park board and the community for your comments tonight. This is going to be a great discussion, an important discussion, and really a budget-driven discussion about how to bring your project to your community and get it on budget so we can build a project with you guys. But before we get into that, I think it's important to talk about where we're at currently from a design standpoint and to talk a little bit about some of the items that led up to the current pricing scenario. So as we move through the design development process, there's certain things that come into play that start to determine how costs come into a project. And one of the primary items, this project has spread over a long period of time. We started many, many years ago, and budgets were established many, many years ago. And as the project develops, there are certain things that we learn as we're going through the design process. Number one, a geotechnical report is a big part of these projects where we learn a lot more about what's on site. And I think that's a big part of where some of these additional costs come into play. A geotechnical report wasn't completed at the time when the original budgets were developed. So as we're learning more, some of the bigger challenges with your site are extensive amounts of topsoil that are there. Some of the other challenges are some pretty challenging, unsuitable soils beneath what's being proposed. So as we develop updated costs through the design development process, we're updating them based on things that we're learning. So it is our responsibility as your design professional and your consultant to make sure that as we go through the design development phase of work, we continue to look at those costs and be responsible to you to tell you, here's where our concerns are and here's what we need to do to balance that budget. To touch on some of the big items where the additional costs came into play, number one, the unsuitable soils and the need for EBS or pulling out those unsuitable soils to build some of the hard surface infrastructure. Number two, extensive amounts of topsoil that exist on site and the common excavation that's going to need to occur to accommodate those large amounts of topsoil. Also, as part of the original budgeting process, we didn't have a complete topographic survey completed at that time. So additional information comes forward that we're able to base our design on. The utility infrastructure is another one that these gentlemen had hit on that we had some extensive increases on as part of the project to get your project to drain adequately, to make sure that we have positive drainage and we don't have wet spots all throughout the park. So before we jump into how we phase it, that's kind of where I wanted to start and say, we're being responsible to you folks here and making sure that as we design, we're continuing to look at costs. Obviously, we all live in a world right now that budgets are challenging. Construction materials are challenging. And our firm's in a unique situation where we do bid a lot of work. So the costs that we're looking at are based on 2020 and 2021 real values that we are seeing as part of the bidding processes. So it's always a challenge when we run into this phase of development in the project, but we want to make sure that we're being responsible to you folks as we move forward into the bidding process. So as we move through the design development process, we met with Jeff, Martin, and Elise and looked at the current budget. And we saw roughly a $1 million increase in cost based on those things that I talked about. So right away, it was our goal to say, hey guys, what can we do as part of this project to bring it on budget and bring it online with the $4.5 million price tag that we had here to work with? So in that discussion, Jeff brought up a really good point, and I appreciated his comments. We wanted to look at how we could create a quadrant of the site that we could come back to at a future phase and not impact as part of the first phase of work. So as we were looking at trying to be inclusive of not only baseball, but also soccer as well, and then the parking, playground, we looked at that northeast sector of the site where we didn't necessarily need to impact it as part of the first phase, and we could come in and build the 300-foot baseball field, the full-size soccer and rugby pitch, and then the pickleball courts as part of a second phase of work. So the first phase would include repaving, milling and repaving the parking lot that does exist at the northwest corner of the site. Keynote number 19. That's roughly 70 spaces, and as you talk about the number of spaces that are coming into play now with roughly 280 spaces, those 70 spaces did exist previously and was not part of the original scope to reconstruct. So this was one of those scope creep items where we did include milling and repaving that parking lot at the northwest corner of the site. There are the two 75 stall parking lots south of that, at least. Those two will also be included as part of the phase 1 project. One of the items I wanted to touch on as part of those two that I think are important to explain is when you see those large expansive numbers of plants being planted as part of this project, per the DNR standards for stormwater management, we are required to treat that water. And our approach to that process would be bioswales. It's a bioswale at the south end of each parking lot. And I think as you start to look at that large number of plants, that is where the majority of those plants are coming into play. We are required to plant those. There's options of doing plugs. There's options of doing potted plants. The plugs don't always establish right away, so we opt to do a potted plant that will establish immediately for our clients. So I think I just wanted to touch on that as part of one of the big landscaping numbers. Also included as part of the phase 1 project would be the two south 220-foot Little League softball fields at the south end of the project. The pathway and regional connection coming from the parking lots. The northwest configuration 250-foot baseball field, but we would be omitting that 300-foot Pony League field with the northeast configuration. We would be building out the majority of the concrete plaza space as well as the building. Others are working on the design right now currently and will be bidding the building separately. But currently, I'm speaking a little bit for the village, but that would be part of the phase 1 scope of work as well. The dugouts are currently included for those fields we talked about as part of the first phase of work. Those fields, I want to talk a little bit about seeding and irrigation and just be very frank with how, in doing many of these projects, taking out irrigation as part of those fields, which is currently in the budget, is one thing that we could evaluate and look at other ways of watering. But because these are going to be seeded fields, it would be my recommendation that we have some type of water out there to get those fields established. We want to make sure that it's going to take time, but we want to make sure that we get you guys playable fields. So those fields will be irrigated and under-drained. Currently, as part of the budget, we have a large line item for amended topsoil as part of those to allow them to drain freely. As we start to look at other potential cost-saving options, I think we're currently working with Reinders and Plant Food to look at an alternate solution for how we would amend that topsoil, or if we need to amend that topsoil. That could be another large cost-saving item. So as we look at the irrigation and the under drain, those are very important parts of it, but the amended soil could be an option for some additional cost savings. As we move to the east side of the site, the regional trail connecting over to the soft surface play area, that'll also be included as part of phase 1. Currently, we do have a budget line item for the soft surface play area and equipment for the playground in that location. And then we've also included repaving the darker portion of the parking lot that you see off of Perry Parkway, and then expanding that to the west with additional stalls there as well to support the east side of the park. The majority of the parking is on the west side of the park, so I think having parking there for those facilities is going to be rather important. As we look at pickleball, I'm going to be very frank and say we love doing pickleball courts. It's one of our favorite things to design. It's been amazing to see how pickleball has come into communities. We were just down at a sports builder convention learning all about how to design the best pickleball courts in the country. So, and we've done a lot of them that we're very proud of. And I think to accommodate pickleball as part of this project is something that we would definitely take on as a challenge and love to do, because I think it would be great for your community, and frankly, we'd love to see it as part of the first phase. As we start to look at the overall, here's how I think we can potentially accommodate that. As we look at the overall amount of parking as part of this project, when you have tournaments at this type of facility for Little League, it draws a ton of people. There is a process where games go and transfer from one game to the other. You have an extensive amount of people coming into one area. So as we started to look at parking for these facilities and this improvement in your park, number one, a goal was to get a lot of that parking off of Oak Street. And we were directed, by our clients to say, how can we make this a safer setting and get the people off the road? So that's part of the reason why you're seeing seeing that many parking spaces is at roughly 280 spaces. Now, we're looking at a full build out as we start to evaluate how many parking stalls we need. So if we're not building a soccer field and a baseball field as part of the first phase, is there an option? And one thing I'm just thinking of while I'm hearing gentlemen talk is, do we look at potentially not building one of those parking lots now? And if you look at the cost, what the budget is for a pickleball facility with 6 courts compared to that parking facility, it's very close in terms of what the numbers are. So if we're able to look at an option for parking, pickleball, and move parking, that would be something that we could potentially evaluate. So, I think I'm going to touch on the majority of the comments. So if we could just quickly go through the budget. Again, these are based on current values and what we're seeing in the marketplace based on the projects that we're bidding. I think it's clear what's in the phase or the phased approach to the project. So the phase 1 project, as designed currently, comes in with a construction total of just over $3.8 million. We believe it's important to include a 7% contingency in this project for unforeseen conditions. At 7%, that's roughly $270,000, bringing the construction estimate subtotal to $4.13 million. We have testing services in there for construction level testing, and then we have the project soft cost for design, permitting, contract administration, and construction level services as well, bringing the base project to just under that $4.5 million price tag.
So if you reduced your fees by half, we could afford pickleball? Is that what you're saying?
I'll second that.
I love putting consultants on the.
We know.
You didn't see that one coming, did
We
you?
hear it all the time.
No, I'm just kidding.
And then the phase 2 scope of work, as outlined in the plan, is roughly $1.3 million with $91,000 in contingency, and then an additional, because we would have to go out and rebid that work potentially, that $52,000 would be for additional bidding. As we look at how to support your community and do what's right for all, we are here to get creative. We are here to look at design options. But that being said, I'm going to reiterate, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are delivering a project that's going to be on budget. And with the world that we're living in currently, that's one of our biggest challenges. So with that, we'd love to, Chase, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think that was a nice summary, Ross. And again, not to reiterate it too much, but it is a challenging industry right now and working in construction. Labor shortages are also an issue that a lot of contractors are dealing with. But when Ross and I were reviewing the most recent cost estimate for this project, we did look at many options, and we did take it extremely seriously because we understand what it means to your community, and it's something that we would much rather have these challenging discussions early on instead of going out to bid on a project that may or may not come back where it needs to be for your community to build this project. So it's something we take very seriously, and I totally understand all the comments that were made earlier, and we're here, like Ross said, to get creative as we can to find potential value engineering options, but we also don't want to design and bid something that 10 years down the line as a community you're not going to be happy with. So that's the balance for us, is really gauging you as a community and what you would like to build and being responsible to that. So thank you.
I know. Yeah, and to add on to that, and I think that's where you're going, is we would rather build less better than more not as well. We want to build facilities that Chase is saying long-term are going to support your community, are going to hold up well. So we don't want to give up on quality just to provide quantity as part of this project. So with that, we'd love to open it up to questions, and I will say that we would love to sit down with any other folks and talk about how we could look at options for this project, so.
Yeah, and if, sorry, so along those lines, we received information, I'm gonna forget.
Jerome provided us.
Oh, yeah, Jerome.
That's Jerome.
Sorry.
So Jerome provided us recommendations on pickleball design, and if you actually look at the design that's up there, we took that seriously, we sat down and,
Yeah.
you know, we
So-
wanted to make sure we were accommodating what you wanted to see as part of that facility.
So specifically on the pickleball, it was a blend somewhat between what you sent us, Jerome, and then looking at the ASBA, American Sports Builders, their guidelines in cooperation with the National Pickleball Association, so.
So, I mean, can I ask a question, Mark?
Yes, you may, Jerome, go ahead.
So, in that respect, I only came across that information because I was on the park board at the time, and I was on the phone when you were doing the last presentation. How do we make the other clubs aware? Again, I don't know how much those dugouts cost, and I don't wanna pick on any sport either, but, you know, one of the estimates had there was $60,000 for concrete dugouts on 4 fields, that's $250,000, is that what the baseball and softball group?
We've
wants?
reduced that already. We actually
Yeah.
just have chain link dugouts.
Prefabricated metal.
So
Prefabricated.
that's already out.
Yeah, we've already,
So
yeah,
that's the part I couldn't
Yeah.
understand is,
Yeah.
there was a very detailed summary that was done back in October of 2020.
yeah.
It's hard to compare the two, so, okay, so some of that,
We actually visited the DeForest athletic complex up there, and I immediately liked the openness of the dugout, you know, the baseball and softball dugout areas, because they were chain link, they were highly visible. We really don't like hiding spots and dangerous spots in parks and stuff like that, so I called them the next day and I said, we wanna take that out and that'll save us some money.
You called us while you were there, Jeff. And you
Did
said,
I?
This is what I
That's
want
right.
to do. And
That's
the
right.
prefabricated, you know, the prefabricated metal system is a great option. But again, the cost for that type of material with the steel costs and everything, it's still expensive.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah.
there's real dollars associated with that.
Can I ask a question about the parking area and area 22, which is the bio area? You were mentioning that DNR requires you to have that area in there and it's loaded with plants. Now that I see it, I was looking at a little tiny computer screen, so I
Yeah.
couldn't see a lot of
Yeah.
detail.
A lot of plants
If
in
you're
there.
talking, I like your idea that you were talking about potentially eliminating one of the parking areas, at least for a period of time. Is there a trigger point that you have to put in that number 22 area? Or can we take that runoff, that storm runoff from those asphalt areas and go into another area? Is there another retention area that we can go to? Or, I don't know what the full storm system looks like in the village. I know we've had some problems.
Yeah,
No,
so
we
those-
don't, we're good.
You guys have a very
Oh,
challenging.
we are now.
We're good.
Yeah.
So those biofilters are associated with total suspended solids removal from vehicles, right? So that's
Yeah.
dirty when you drive in there and things fall off of your
Salt.
vehicle, and then are then, washed away by rainfall. It's there to clean that water, so that does need to be constructed as part of the parking lot. It's not something you can omit and then maybe build a few years later.
It's gonna be smaller, or, we've got a
Yep.
parking lot on the other side, is all that storm runoff going off to the west? I'm just
So.
trying to understand the biofilter system. I understand the need and why you do it, but we have a lot of surface area there. We currently
Yeah.
have surface area there. We don't put filters in the street areas.
I think,
Yeah, so speaking from a, municipal development standpoint outside of the right of way, and we're speaking of DNR, but I just wanna highlight too, the village and Dane County have some of the most strict stormwater requirements
Yeah.
in the state. So we're tasked with meeting those, and there's a purpose for that, right? There's reasons that these municipalities implement those requirements, and it's for stormwater quality. So in looking at this development, we do not have unneeded or items that are not required. Everything serves a purpose to get us to the requirements set forth by the municipality in Dane County. I wish sometimes we had a little bit more flexibility in looking at engineering, but looking at this project as designed and how far we are down the road, we really don't have any flexibility to remove stormwater management features.
With the, down on the south side of I believe that's the south, there is there's a waterway back there. There is I believe a creek of some sort. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's.
regional.
Okay.
That's a regional conveyance feature coming down from the north, and it runs to the east. You know, that's all large regional detention that's taken into account other facilities as well. So we really, you know, we have to treat water before we can just,
Before you
Yeah,
get into
and
that,
there's-
you can't use that as a potential biofilter.
no, because that's already, we have to look at that, and I'm just a peasant landscape architect, but I'm speaking as, you know, that's spoken for, and at this point, we have to look at this project as a whole and say, maybe we're not treating as much on that parking lot or that parking lot, but big picture, we're treating, you know, the 275 stall lots to make up for some as well. So it's a balance of making the model work and meeting the TSS, total suspended solid removal requirements, so.
And there's been a lot of talk about cost in kind. I know some other companies have talked about I guess it's the concession stand in the middle. Where are we with that type of thing to take up some of the cost?
Yeah,
Jeff, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'd like to, two comments on this. I'll take the concession stand right off the bat. So if you notice in the cost estimate here, there's a cost in here for buildings and miscellaneous amenities, and so that is actually part of the, even though it's a different contract, I think you have about 500,000 of that allocated, of that 567 allocated for the concession building. We are scared that might end up being $700,000 plus, just with the way the bidding market has been and the way the items are coming back, which could even put us further behind where we are now. I mean, that's just realistically where we're looking at it. Now, there has been, one of the things that we are incorporating into that design with the architects, it's a Sketchworks architecture. We've asked that they put a line item in the contract that says deduction for in-kind and donated items. So it's on, and that's how we have to do it in the public bidding market. We just can't, you know, it's difficult, according to our attorney. It's very challenging. So what we end up doing is we put a line item in the contract so that if a contractor out there is able to secure, let's say $200,000 worth of donated or in-kind items, that can lower their overall cost by $200,000 and likely put them as a low bid for the project and be able to utilize that in-kind and donated items on the contract. Now, we don't know that until the day in which that is actually opened. And unfortunately, sometimes people's envision of what will be donated and in-kind and what is actually donated and in-kind tend to sometimes be a lot less. And we don't know how the last year and a half and COVID has really changed that. So the concession building, that's where the concession building is right now. And we will be getting, that's on a similar track to be bid in January as well, so we can start the construction of that. The other item I wanted to comment on, I want to get back here to this map. So one of the things that we said from day one on this project, and it has scared me as a resident since we moved here in 2005, Oak Street on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon and morning scares the heck out of me. Why we have not had a serious
Let's not look for
pedestrian,
one.
huh?
Let's not look for one.
I know, but why we have not had a serious pedestrian, child versus car accident, I'm thinking we've been very fortunate, and I don't ever want to see one there. But, Oak Street's narrow, we have parking on both sides, and we have it there because there's really no other option for all of the soccer fields and other tournaments going on. So our direction to Rettler from day one is we will make Oak Street a no parking zone. So it would be no parking from Brook Street all the way up to, is that Kennedy or Nygaard? Nygaard. And it would be no parking throughout this, just for safety. And we wanted that to occur because we wanted to be able to move all of the parking off of the roadway. It's much, much safer. So that's, if you're wondering why we're putting all the parking here, when you say, well, we've got all this out on the streets, I don't feel it's safe.
I mean, we go through there at 10 miles an hour sometimes, and I still,
too fast.
I have my foot on the brake the entire time.
And North Perry has gotten busy as well, certainly when the school is.
Correct, and they have no
doing as well.
parking
On one
along,
side.
huh?
The east side.
The east side of that is all no parking.
Mhm. Okay. That is
One
true.
question about parking. And I don't know if this is private or public parking, but between the hockey rink and the soccer field, is that
private.
public parking or private?
Private. Well,
It's
it's
private,
it's school and hockey. The hockey has a shared use agreement with the school district.
That's too bad.
Majority is,
Parking area.
yeah. You're talking about the area that's down over here north
Yeah,
of the
right,
hockey rink.
exactly, right.
Yeah,
Because that, I mean, it's a little bit more of a walk to the park, but it's a big parking area. If we could
Right.
utilize that, we could maybe save parking on the west side.
yeah. We think it will be still utilized. I mean, just because people park where they want to park, but unfortunately, we can't count that towards our design because we don't have, it's, same discussion we've gotten into with the library and wanting to use the parking lot across the street. When
School,
it
yeah.
was gonna be up on North Main.
Right, we have to hold ourselves to the same
Standards.
standards we hold our
Yep.
developers to as well.
Yep.
Phil, did you have comments?
Yes, I have just some initial questions. In reference to the walking path that runs between the diamond, will that be a path that's open all the time?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Is there a sidewalk on the eastern edge of the property? I don't think there's one there now.
We would have a sidewalk, I think as part of the design, isn't there a sidewalk on there or not?
Sidewalk or a path?
We are adding connections at the northeast corner of the site, Jeff, and then also off that parking lot.
You're right, we,
Yep.
So
There
will-
is, I don't believe there's a parking lot along the west side
You
of
mean a
North
si-
Perry.
a sidewalk, yeah.
Yep.
No, it's a good point.
I wonder if we might wanna consider that.
On the,
Isn't there one on the,
There's
one on the
there's
other
a
side.
path on the high school side over on the east
Oh,
side
okay,
over
So
there.
so there is one on the outside of.
Oh, yeah, there's
Yes.
there's
So
a
Phil-
12-foot wide path or a 10-foot wide path over there.
Okay,
Our goal is to get people through the core of the complex and get them to cross Perry with
Right.
a
That's
safe
right.
crossing over to that
okay,
other.
that makes
That's right.
sense. I just wanted to make sure there was, I had considered the other side, but I wanted to make sure there was a conduit there.
Yeah.
The other question I had is, at the very bottom, between Brook and Creek, there's right at the very bottom off the end of that diamond, it's kind of an oval-shaped walkway there to your right and down.
This?
This, yeah, what's this area being used?
That's wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, well, so all the way back there to that edge is all wastewater treatment?
All the white area here is wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, okay.
And we will be expanding that plant into this area in the next 5 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. That's all I have for now.
Okay. Other comments from the park board?
I feel like the elephant in the room is pickleball. That's really the topic, right? It's a joke, so, but, so it sounded like there's a potential, it sounds like there's a strong ask to see if we can include pickleball in phase 1. And it looks like an option would be to ignore lot 12 and instead include pickleball.
It would, I think we would, and I want to go back here and say, I can't speak on behalf of Jeff and the team, because there's been a lot of people that have been involved in this process that have are donating large amounts of dollars. So we're just trying to accommodate everybody comprehensively as part of the project. Now, as I understand people saying there's a large amount of parking as part of this project, we understand we need a lot of parking because of the type of Little League and youth events and the number of parents and everybody that's going to be here. But like I said, if we don't have a full build out, I would still want to keep like lot 12 and 13
Yes.
because it's on the other
side,
side of it's on the east side of the park. We need to provide parking because it's a big space, right? We want to keep parking on that side of the park. If anything, maybe we look at one of the parking lots, along Oak, And Jeff, I don't mean to speak for you, because we've gone through
Yep.
a long process of design, you know, and looking at all these options, but I'm just trying to look at options for how we could accommodate pickleball. And as you look at the budget amounts, you know, they're close in terms of what the hard surface for that's gonna cost, and then the hard surface and all the fencing for the pickleball. Now, I know we can V some things out as part of pickleball, like fencing, as we look at how to lower some fencing, different fencing materials. There's ways we can evaluate how to bring that cost down, so. But I think it would be one of the, and Jeff, I don't know what your thoughts are, one of the lots along Oak. I know Oak is your big concern with.
Yeah. So I have a question for pickleball folks, because trust me, I would, if we could get the pickleball courts fixed, I'd get far less emails, right, Mike? Because Mike and I talk about we talk about the courts, and those tennis courts, by the way, were installed in 1976. So they have served our community exceptionally well for almost 50 years. But, fundraising, when we started this process, I mean, if we go back, Mark, you were part of that from the beginning. Dave, you were part of that from the beginning. We set an original budget of like $4.5 million, and everyone was meeting, and then I know pickleball came late into the discussion of everything. At the time, pickleball had made a commitment for a certain amount of fundraising, and I know fundraising is difficult. But I think the feeling is, we'll add pickleball, but it's gonna require a pretty hefty fundraising amount. And I asked Lisa the other day, and I know, you guys have done some great things out there at the tennis courts with some fundraising nights and that type of stuff, but, is there an opportunity for you amongst your members and everything like that to fundraise? I mean, we've had, baseball, we have a big check up top that baseball gave $100,000, I think, right?
$60,000.
$60,000, I'm sorry. It was, where was the $100,000 from? The bank? Bank. So we've got some big checks. We have softball was $20,000 or $30,000 or something like that. Some really serious commitments from some of these groups. And, fundraising has really stalled. That sign out there has not moved at all in the last. It could be moved just a little bit. It could be moved a little bit, but not much. But the problem we have, even if we look at our budget of $4.5 million, we're not at $4.5 million. We're at $4,220,000 or something like that, right?
In the bank.
In the bank?
Yeah, we're about 240 short of the 500,000.
Okay, so we're about $240,000 short of the $500,000. So, that's what we have to take into account as well. Now, one of the things, what Ross was asking the other day, or today, was, what can we cut out? Well, and you can back me on this, Ross, I sent you a marked up drawing set the other day, and I started marking out things like, what can we take out? And I said, I think this parking lot. I said the play area. So don't tell the people that were just here.
You get more emails.
You guys now know why I check under my vehicle for bombs every night. But and then I asked the irrigation question too.
Yeah.
I said, and I could hear Ross cringe on the other side of the receiver when I mentioned it. But so my point being is, I think there are ways that this can, like you talk about bringing a project together that does satisfy things. I think if we could see some fundraising from the pickleball folks, or a commitment to say, okay, we're gonna raise $50,000, okay? And with that, plus us taking a few things out of the design, that's what we're having to do with all of our projects. Village Hall, this project, I'm sure the concession stand's gonna come back with the same thing as far as what can we take out. We are not putting in lighting. Maybe we don't even put in the
Pickleball lighting.
Huh?
The lighting is part of pickleball. That was another.
Right, we take out certain things and we just say, okay, that's, what we're gonna build. I completely support what Ross is saying, is we wanna build quality. And that's what we have. If you go out in Highlands and Netherwood, a park designed and constructed under Rattler Corporation, nice quality, long-term park. have a long history in the village of using good enough, you know, a guy with a grader that can go out there and grade our parks, okay?
A lot of volunteer lawn
A
mowing.
lot of
lines.
volunteers, a lot of, and, you know, God bless us all, we can, you know, we do a nice work when we do it together, but it's not the level that parents and families moving in are coming to expect.
The biggest point I look at this is that we only have one sports organization represented. And there was a lot of discussion over the last couple of years about in the development of this. And we had sports organizations that were quiet and resistant and got into a buzz about that.
Yep.
And phases were a big issue. And we went away from phases and grew the budget in order to be able to afford to do this. And now it's getting larger. So we're going back to phases. And big concern is, what do we do in between the phases? And what do we do about if the second phase doesn't go forward? So I really believe we got to get a voice from some of the other sports organizations to really find out, because I know soccer is saying, where are we going to go with this in the interim? You know, they're trying to be friendly, as they didn't really step up initially, but then they were kind of drawn out as to, what are you saying? Why aren't you saying anything?
Right.
To the
Still
point
have
where
not contributed anything, I don't think,
Correct.
financially, yeah.
Correct. And so they went directly to the village board and bypassed the park board in regards to this. And so I do think we need to hear more about, and we're going to have to answer some of the questions, because if we go ahead with part of this, what's to say that they may lose everything until that phase 2 starts moving forward? Because I know the intention was that the soccer fields would be out in the outfields of the diamonds, and that was a part of filling the soccer fields into those areas. So you start doing all this excavating, what's going to be left? Is it going to end up being dirt fields? And then where's soccer going to go for that interim, for that time
I think in
frame?
the interim, that with a phase 2, they'd actually have,
Remain.
huh?
They would have, I was just
They'd have
looking at
that-
that, Jeff, they would still have usable field.
Almost 15 and 16, and, which is this area up here and this area up here, as well as all of this area. 'Cause
We're
any
gonna
type
need
of-
some space to transition our grades
Right.
out of the plaza space and down into that area, but Chase and I were talking about this, the majority of that would
Yeah.
remain untouched, so it would be programmable space.
In one way, it allows transition.
It actually would assist.
Yeah.
Right, rather than having a whole year.
I don't wanna say doing it in 2 phases is a benefit, right? But it's
Right.
not, I mean, but it's.
And I think, Mark, I wanna touch on just some creative ways, I think, to keep the process moving to get into a good bid window. You know, we can bid alternates, so we have to design this project as a whole either way, right? So as we're working through it, all the storm sewer, everything's gotta work together. We can bid some of these items as alternates, so if all of a sudden we have some flexibility in terms of a budget, like a pickleball complex, we can bid that as an alternate and understand what the costs are gonna be, so that we could fold it into the project if budget were to allow.
Mhm. Did you have comments? Phil?
I just want to clarify something you just mentioned, and that is area 15 and area 16, for lack of a better term. Are you saying that those will remain, are now playable and will remain so? Or at least at a practice level, or?
Yes. I mean, they're not configured like this, but.
Right, but I mean, there's still grass there.
Correct.
Right.
And they'd still be able to use it for practice, or?
Right, the whole idea is everything in that red box there would be essentially semi-undisturbed, except for, like Ross was saying, you know, just maybe a 20-foot buffer around that will, where silt fence will be
Yeah.
and equipment
Okay.
will be grading into.
Well, I understand that there are other parties. But I came here tonight with a motion that read something along the lines of move pickleball courts and eliminate one parking lot. So I think a number of people, and thanks to Elise for providing some good information today, and eliminate one parking lot. But I have to agree with Jeff. We have to maintain that safety, and I think eliminating a parking lot is gonna create a problem. And I really like the idea of getting the parking off of Oak Street.
Yeah.
That being said, if you look at the diagram, everything that's being built is for youth sports, and that's great. But if we eliminate pickleball, then we're eliminating a good number of people that enjoy that. And despite what I think Mike might have said earlier, I think it's really an adult sport. I might go as far as say it's senior citizen. But, so if we look at the overall plan here, the pickleball is a pretty small section they're asking for to be included in phase one. And I would like, I'd like to think that maybe we could consider that as a part.
Other comments?
The thing that I would add to this, and we can go back whenever we started all this, 9,
3
10
years.
years ago. Oh, 3.
Things longer.
As much as, the one thing that's always had me wondering is the size and of this concession stand. And there's a lot of money attached to it, as you mentioned, Jeff. And I know you also said that that might be something that's going to be looked at in terms of if we have to cut somewhere, where do we cut?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a 2-level.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to pull something up while you're talking about that.
Okay.
David. I'll pull something up.
Okay. And the original design, it had the little Tin Man piece on top and to go with the one here, the Village, it's great. But I'm gonna look at it from somebody that was in youth baseball for 15 years and was at tournaments for 15, 20 years. And it's I don't think what we're looking at or what was designed is a need. One level with 2 windows, 3 windows for people to get at, bathrooms, is what everybody sort of has. There might be some other ones out there. I know Verona has one that's a double, 2 layers, and they've got windows because they have their scoreboards up there. The unfortunate part about it, when we hold tournaments here, our scoreboards are in the dugouts, or some mom or dad has to take them because we can't get enough people to help do it anyway. So to have all that up there, I look at it like if we could save some money, if that money can go over to the pickleball guys, that would be great. But I think it's something we need to look at because to me, it's a lot for what we don't need. I think it'd be more unused space than it would be used space once it's built, if it is built and it's the present of what was designed. There's a room for umpires. You know what? Being one, we're never thought of, so it's awesome. But I'm also gonna tell you that in the summer, we change at our car. To have that up there, like I said, wonderful, but I don't know that that's absolutely a need. So I would say if there's a way we can, if it comes down to it, if there's a way you can look at that piece of it, if there's a way, you know what, if you're going through this and we gotta find $250,000 to get rid of, in my opinion, that's where we have to start to look. It's a great thing, it's well-designed, but I just think it's overkill for what we need in this park.
We were just gonna pull up the.
I'm just gonna,
One second, yeah.
I would agree with Dave, and I'd say, maybe you don't, that could be constructed in such a way as a single story that it could be added on to it a later date. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure, sorry.
They're not doing any design on that. They're designing.
Yeah, this is
Oh,
a
okay.
separate contract.
Are you asking about the bill?
Well,
So that's
So,
separate.
so just to give you a little update on the concession building, we've kept it about as minimal as we can. I did push it out 2 feet because it was feeling too crowded. Concession stand, you need an efficient, a concession area, some refrigerators. This is really actually, pretty small. I mean, it's a little small still for me, how I feel about it, but you also need storage. The number of bathrooms, we had Rettler calculate based on the full build out and everything, and that's, that's just kind of design, what do you call it, requirement. I mean, it's based off the number of fields and the usage isn't correct, like that. The second floor, this is actually changed now. This is an old one.
This is the original.
But it does allow second story scoring tables up here, so you don't have, and then this is now an open stairway, and we don't have a bathroom or an umpire. There was just like a storage area upstairs. So it's really, we've tried to cut down where we can. There's just a type of building of how it is looking, so it can somehow kind of have a character with matching what Oregon has with its downtown building. Yeah, you're right, Dave, I agree. You know, there's probably, you can definitely build a cheaper building. The problem with that is that just for many generations, we will be chasing, you know, I'd be worried about not spending the money today, and regretting it. We're doing that with the library, we're doing that with a lot of other parks and park buildings right now and stuff, so. I thought do we have a more current one here?
Not from Discovery.
Not
It
in
wouldn't
that.
be in there, it would be, maybe you have it in your email.
In my email, okay. But, yeah, it's not a huge, it's not anywhere near the size like out at DeForest or anything like that. And that's been the challenge, to try to get this to work. But, you know, we also have to have, I mean, you have to have a number of bathrooms. We could have 1,000, 1,500 people out here, correct?
1,000 people, yeah.
You know, so, we don't want people going out just directly to the wastewater treatment plant. We could have a trough. We could have a trough that drains right to the waste influent station.
We'd have to have some cleaner, bio-cleaner or something.
Yeah.
We got a question from the audience.
I'm Deanne, I'm also a pickleball player, but, Joe, can you explain, if you have the concession stand for this, Little League, what is the age group that uses those fields, and what is the duration of the season that you would need a concession stand for that? Because
And bathrooms,
we
yeah.
were in soccer for a gazillion years, Coach did.
Mhm.
Community, we never had a facility that did that. We worked under a tent and sold baked goods to them.
Right.
You remember those years?
Yep, yep.
So, can you just explain who would be using that? Outside of the bathrooms, I get, but.
Right. The bathrooms, obviously, anytime there's a use, and even if there's a tournament use for these fields and the soccer, you know, soccer in the outfield for the little guys and gals, the bathrooms would be used. You know, right now, well, I talked to DeForest recently. I think they had 25 tournaments scheduled at their complex, and that ran from probably March through November, you know, March through October. The thing with some of these facilities, and it's that if you build it, they will come type of thing, and that's really how communities are looking at some of these. I mean, Dave, I don't know, how many tournaments could you have?
You could have one every weekend if you wanted to.
Right.
I mean, right now, baseball has 2 and softball would have 1 in the present facilities. The hard part you have when you, in it, like our community, DeForest is a little different because it's, you know, they're, the hard part is we have our tournaments on certain weekends, and Stoughton has theirs on a weekend, and Verona has theirs. And when you start holding too many tournaments at your complex, you start to pull away from your other communities that, A, come to your tournament, and B, you go to theirs. But to answer your question, if you could get the help, if you could have the bodies to do it, you could run one every weekend if you wanted to. And you'd get teams.
And that's based on volunteer, correct?
Oh, yes, correct. Yep.
So, you have that going against you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Hugely.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's important to understand too is you look like at a De Pere facility and look at this facility, these are natural turf fields too. So the other thing we want to keep in mind here as you start to play events and utilize the facility is that, number one, there's got to be a good maintenance program that's going to support a tournament every single weekend. So there's a big difference between those synthetic complexes and a natural complex as well.
Right, correct.
If you don't let these outfields heal, even just with baseball being played on them, you'll tear them apart. They'll never
We'll never
come back.
catch up, yeah.
Never come back.
The other thing to keep in mind is none of any of this work do we have any improvements to these bathrooms or to this shelter, which and the other item is a maintenance shed that we need for public works that would be out here that would handle all the equipment, the drag nets, the bases, the lighting controllers, all that kind of stuff. We've acknowledged right away that we don't have the money for it. And so all we have is, I think in the drawings, it just says space reserved for maintenance shed. So, you know, there are things that aren't even in phase 2 that ideally in a perfect world we'd want to do. This area over here is, we've always said we weren't going to touch that because of budget. Right, Lisa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is this Stotts or is
It's
this?
Stotts.
That's
Okay.
that's- yeah.
Wish there was a way like East Stotts or something like that, or West Stotts would be able to figure out, because there's this one and
That's Faust.
Faust Field over here, yeah. So, you know, maybe this would be an improved area as part of a phase 2. But, and someone asked about the schedule, we don't have phase 2 in a budget right now, or in a capital plan.
Without having some of the community input and understanding some of this, I just don't feel comfortable sending it to the village board at this time. I do really want to hear from the other organizations, because they were really active in it, and we are running short. The way the village board has set this up is that the community should give up, contribute $500,000. It's wonderful that the community bank has stepped forward, but we are still running short. This tells me a little story about where's the backing of it. You had your hand up before, Mike.
I just, if I could, just a couple minutes, I'd like to address a couple comments that were made a little earlier for the record. We were talking about fundraising and pickleball should get involved in doing fundraising. I'd like to step back historically and just chat for a minute and from where we were to where we are. When we got involved with getting pickleball into the major project 2 or 3 years ago, one of the comments back from the village was, well, pickleball needs to do some fundraising. Very, very soon after that, we came together as a sports entity, not necessarily individual sports, of which Jerome and I and Deanna and a few others were part of this, with Randy leading the way trying to raise money. Pickleball is in a unique area that we do not have membership. We do not have people that join an organization. We don't have activity fees. People come out and play pickleball. But to address the fundraising, we have been actively fundraising. If you go back to the days of Randy when he was leading the group before COVID, we actually broke the businesses up in town into various sports organizations, and we went knocking door to door. We weren't real successful, granted. But pickleball, and Lisa can attest to this, we have been fundraising. But it's been, in the grand scheme of things, I'll call it small dollars compared to the big dollar donors that we have. We just made a donation to Lisa just, was it a month and a half ago. It wasn't a lot of money, but a couple of our new members came out and said, hey, if you get the word out to our pickleball players, we will match donations. So we are trying to do that, but without the benefit of activity fees, we can't make the big donations. The other thing I would like to address is somebody made the comment about maybe taking the lights out of pickleball to bring down the scope. If you think back to the original park project, we originally had 12 courts in there. We came back because of budget constraints and we said, 12 is probably overkill. Let's go down to 6, but we need to add lights because when you look at the people that come and play pickleball, we get, like I mentioned earlier, we get so many families, so many people that come after work, When you start playing in the spring and you go into late fall like we did in the beginning of November, you lose the daylight, and you're gonna lose the family opportunities without having lights. So as part of that, which actually did go to the village board for a vote, and it's in the minutes somewhere along the way, we went from 12 courts down to 6 with lights. So I would ask that the board really consider not taking the lights out of that, because I think it's really necessary for the good of the community. And as I mentioned, with age neutral and gender neutral, we get these families that come out after work, and without lights, we're not gonna be able to do that.
Elise?
So just a couple thoughts moving forward with the timing. One thing we want to do to make sure we get the best pricing and be able to kind of get the most for our money is hit the ideal bid window, which is kind of that December to February timeframe. And if we are able to stick with the schedule that we sort of lined out with getting the planning commission for their January meeting and getting a go-ahead for the board to release the bids, we can do what Ross has suggested and have a couple alternates where, you know, the bid prices, I know you guys always kind of have a conservative estimate because we don't want to get, again, ahead of ourselves and later down the road find out that we can't afford something that we thought we would. So maybe the prices will come back more favorably than we think that they will, and there's an opportunity then to make a decision about elements of the park that can be afforded or taken out. I think if we want to try to get this project done in '22, it would behoove us to probably try to stay to that schedule, get the best pricing that we can, and then at that point, you know, again, we try to do our best to reach out to the sports organizations to let them know what's being discussed. The park board agendas and packets are always public. I'm not saying that we can't do more to reach out to folks, but there's also a responsibility, I think, from the sports organizations to be aware and involved with what's going on. So we've got great representation from Pickleball tonight. We had great representation and involvement from a lot of other sports organizations, both in the design and the fundraising earlier on the process. So it's important, though, that everybody stay involved throughout the whole process and not just assume that they said their piece and then, you know, they don't need to be involved further on in the process. So that would be my recommendation, is that we keep moving forward. We make the sports organizations aware that these, you know, items are going to be discussed. We'll be back at Planning Commission January 6th, and we can receive comment, you know, anytime from here until bid out, see what the numbers come back with, and then at that point, we will have an opportunity to heard from the community and see what we can afford and what people are willing to compromise on, and then move forward with a plan to start construction in the springtime.
So the next step would be to the Planning Commission.
Right, so I think we are planning ideally next Monday to do an update to the village board, just kind of let them know about the park board conversation, where the numbers were coming back at. We would do a site plan review for the park as a whole, not any one particular phase, but just approving the site plan as a whole at the park board, Planning Commission, January 6th, and then not remembering the exact date, Martin, after that, but it would be authorization from the board shortly after that to bid the project, and we would do those bid advertisements in late January, early February.
We were aiming for the January 10th village board meeting for authorization to bid, because I think the feedback we heard from Rattler is that we don't want to get much later because these prices will get even worse.
Contractors are gonna begin to fill up with work. They already are. I mean, it's a crazy scenario we're in, guys, with materials, but there's a ton of work out there right now, which is the crazier thing. So people are getting busy.
So, I mean, even regardless of, I guess, what happens at the park board, I would probably put this before the village board too, just to make a decision on whether they're okay with waiting longer, just given the ramifications of that.
We have had a lot of public input in the process as a whole. If you look back, it's been 4 or 5 years of planning. So again, it's important for all the user groups and the community at large to stay involved and, you know, speak up for their spaces. And that doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, again, that's on them, I think, too, to be active, involved, and checking in with what the park board's doing and discussing. So.
Okay.
Then thanks everybody for all your comments. I would just like to go ahead and make a motion to recommend approval of the plans with alternates as presented to the village board.
Do we have a second?
Sorry, let me clarify, with alternate?
So they described being able to write up some alternate plans that might include things like the pickleball court or other options for us to explore.
Great.
So I just wanted to make sure that that got on the record, that we would have the plan as presented with alternates to the village board.
I would second that.
Do we have any further discussion?
I would just add that, based upon the timeline that we've just given, this is probably our only chance to make a recommendation to the village board. So it's the one.
So when we get the bids back, we'll come through with the park board first. So you guys will see the bids and the alternates and the pricing and everything that comes back, and you'll have a chance to make a recommendation to the village board based on those bids.
Oh,
I think that was
I misunderstood.
February.
I think the February
Yeah.
park board is probably when that will come to you guys.
Well, it said, the village board, January 10th for final plan approval and authorization to bid the project, on January 10th. Is that
Yep.
accurate?
Yep.
That's just a bid, yeah.
So that they're giving us the authorization to go out to bid the project, the bids
With the alternate?
with the alternates.
Oh, okay.
And then that'll all come back by end of January. We'll come to the February park board meeting with all that information. You guys will have a chance to review it, make recommendation to the
Great.
village
I
board.
misunderstood.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so,
Thank you.
yeah.
Martin, we'll want to let the project for probably around that 3 weeks to a month to give people a long enough time to give numbers. So if we're in that January timeframe of, January, say it goes out January 11th, we'll want into February, early February is when the numbers will
Yeah,
be
I
coming
think,
back.
I'm looking back at my emails we sent after that Zoom call we did, so we did actually laid out the timeline, so that would be, if the board authorizes the advertising of the bid package, that'd be January 10th. It would be published then on the 20th of January and the 27th in our local paper, and shared with interested contractors, and then the bid opening would be February 10th. So perhaps what we might do for the February park board meeting is, rather than the second Tuesday, we could have a meeting maybe the third Tuesday, that would be the 15th, and that would be after that bid opening. And we'd have that information to be able to share
Great.
with you all, depending on if we're able to get everything together for the packet on the 11th, but.
Okay.
So
Good.
let me interject, because the 15th could possibly be an election.
That's right, yeah. So we could also do a different.
We can
date
talk in
or something.
January about timing and
Mhm.
setting up meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor with a second, and any further discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So moved. Any abstentions? So moved. New business, number 8, we don't have any new. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
No new business. Item 9, items for future meetings. So next meeting date set for January 11th, so that would follow through.
Yep, we'll keep that.
Does that work for everyone, based on your calendars? We look forward to having an additional board member. Other things that we look at discussing in the future is the sculpture park that was discussed, as well as item C, the recreational coordination job description. Any other further discussion from the park board members?
You wanted the athletic clubs to be at the January meeting, correct?
Yes, I do believe we should do that. Call for an adjournment?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So moved.